Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of Social 545. I'm here with my co-host, Carlos Gill. I hope he's where I'm pointing because sometimes it gets all messed up. And we're also joined by Jason Keith from Social Fresh and Tyler Anderson from Casual Fridays. So I'm glad you guys are with us. Episode 4, we got a lot to talk about today. Lots going on in social this week. And we're going to talk about social media conferences because both of you two organize events around it, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. All right, so why don't you guys do a quick intro for the audience, for those of you who don't know you guys, and then we'll jump right into the social news.
Jason, go for it.
How about I intro Tyler and Tyler can intro me?
We've done that before.
So Tyler runs a cool agency called Casual Fridays, does a lot of work with Marriott, has employees, really smart guy, really cool agency. If you need a social media agency, I recommend checking it out. He also runs a great podcast, Social Media Hour. Is that the name?
Social Media Social Hour.
Social Media Social Hour, which I've been lucky enough to be a guest on, but it's a great show. He does a really great job. I'm jealous of his podcasting skills. And he also is the organizer and event manager of Social Media Day San Diego.
It's impressive. I didn't know you knew all that. So,
Very nice intro.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Now, let's see if I get this right. This guy, am I doing it right?
Yep.
You are.
I've never done it right. Okay, so that guy is Jason Keith. You may have known him for a while. He has been kind of one of the I'd say one of the first thought leaders. Certainly a guy I've always looked up to. And I think I want to say I first came across him through some webinars and events that, not events, but just webinars like in 2009. Is that right, Jason? Were you doing those back then?
Oh, yeah.
So that's where I think I first became like aware of who he was. And then I had the pleasure of meeting him in person for the first time. I think it was 2012 when he had one of his Social Fresh conferences in San Diego. So that was the first time I had the opportunity to meet him. And then, of course, since then, every year I've been to one of his Social Fresh events, be it out here on the West Coast or this past year, I had the honor of actually making it to my first Social Fresh East conference. And of course, he runs socialfresh.com, which is a great, online magazine blog all about social media news. And he also just recently launched Social Media Current, which is your basically one-stop shop that you can stay current with what's happening on social media. So that's who that guy is.
Awesome. Let's prop it up for these two. They did great intros for each other. Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, SM Current is great. Actually, Carlos told me to subscribe to it. I think it was last week or the week before, and he's like, we should definitely keep an eye out on this and try to curate content for our show through it. So thanks for that nifty little list every day. I subscribe to it every day. I don't know.
Awesome.
Everyone's doing. All right.
I was going to say, since we are talking about Social Media Current, I saw today a lot of content around Snapchat.
Yes.
So let me ask you guys a question. Who actually curates the content for your newsletter every day? Like, who's going out and looking for what content to actually put into it?
Great question. So Tyler's one of our founding editors. He's one of 4 founding editors outside of myself. So that's Jeannie Dietrich, who writes the Spin Sucks blog. Jim Tobin, who runs basically the oldest social media agency, Ignite Social Media in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Nicole Kelly, who runs the agency side of Social Media Explorer, Jason Falls' company that they merged a couple years ago. And they all do a daily. Jeannie actually does 2 days right now. And then myself and one of our staff, Maliha, is kind of an admin and double checks them, make sure we don't repeat stories, tries to keep the balance of news and how-to articles. And we don't go out a lot to find articles. We actually have built a back end that is kind of like a Google Newsreader or a Feedly that brings in all these sources that I've curated over the years. So we've got like 100 websites that we bring in automatically. So when Tyler logs in and selects his links for the day, he has like 100 stories to choose from that he can go in and X out or check and to curate his list. He can also add in stuff that doesn't automatically get fed in. If he finds something on like USA Today or some site that we wouldn't normally feed in, he can always add those custom.
It's a really cool back end that Jason's team built there. And excuse me. And as I said, so it's super simple because you can go on there and obviously you don't just want to, pick the articles based on the headlines, but what I just go on there and I do is I look at the ones that do seem the most enticing. I hit the command enter so they open in a new tab. That's how I do my fact check. Okay, this seems relevant. This seems cool. And we try to like, we don't want it all to be like, newsworthy. We want some of it to be news. We want some of it to be like how-to tactical information. So we try to give you, a diverse, a group of articles for you to read.
Yeah, I like the format, how it's just kind of this middle column. They're kind of stacked on top of each other. I feel like it's really digestible for me compared to other newsletters I receive. So awesome job on that. Everyone should subscribe. I think someone dropped in the link, right? Yes.
Yeah, we were there earlier.
It's socialmediacurrent.com. Really easy to find. It's supposed to be dead simple. We wanted to make it really simple for the editors. We wanted to make it really useful for folks. Even if you don't click on the links every day, just seeing the headlines kind of keeps you in the know and keeps you current. And that's the goal.
Cool. So
what I've wanted for a long time. So I'm glad it finally exists.
So speaking of staying in the know and current, let's talk about Twitter moments. Everyone was kind of talking about that. That was sort of the buzz for this week. So they finally launched it, and it was supposed to be called Lightning. Project Lightning was sort of originally how they pitched it, and that's what Chris Sacca was talking about today or this week. I think it launched Monday or Tuesday. We saw moments. So what are your guys' thoughts? Do you guys think it's a good play? Obviously, they have issues with user acquisition. That's where they're really focused on. But how do you guys see sort of the feature growing and evolving? And do you think it's going to be a game changer?
I'll go first. I don't know if it's a game changer. I think it's certainly going to maybe help Twitter, because a lot of people do use Twitter to get their news. And if you go and some people don't invest the time necessarily to go and really build out their lists, for example. So, so if you're just one of those people and you're following tons of people on Twitter, your news feed is pretty much worthless. And so I think the moments can help that sense in like aggregating the content based on these topics. And some people, we get it because we're in social media. We understand trending hashtags and all that stuff, but some people don't get it. They don't know to go search by hashtags. So I think it really kind of dummies it down. And that's, I think one of the goals of that Twitter obviously needs to try to do is get back and get growth, get people on the platform. So now if I go on there and I go like, oh, what's going on news or what's going on sports? And then they have it broken down by these topics. Then you can kind of see all the tweets pertaining to that. I think it could be. I think it's a step in the right direction for them. That's my take. We'll see what happens with it though.
Jason, what are your thoughts?
I think it's pretty stupid. I liked Discover, which was a feature that they deprecated about 3.5 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, and it was basically the best of people you were connected to. So if like more of your friends favorited something, retweeted something, clicked a link on something, and you hadn't already seen it in your stream, it would surface it in this Discover tab. Super useful, super relevant to you because it's people you follow and you can control it. So if I kept getting a bunch of stories about the Boston Red Sox from some person I was randomly connected to, and I didn't like the Boston Red Sox, which I happen to like them, but let's just say in this example, I didn't, right? I could unfollow that person and that would stop showing up in my Discover feed. So I really like that. I think the fact that they deleted that really upset me. So now I'm going to hate anything else they do to replace it. But I think Tyler's probably right. It is a step in the right direction, but it's not as good as what Discover was. So it feels still like a step back for me. I think the challenge is to make it a dead simple service that surfaces really interesting content for people that don't know what they're doing on Twitter. That is the problem, as Tyler alluded to. I think this is probably the right direction. They're basically going to have to change the home feed. I think they're going to have to give power users the option of keeping whatever they want their home feed to be. But for default, they're going to have to change the home feed to something like Discover or something like this new Lightning Moments situation. But it's nowhere near what it needs to be. It seems like a very early first step towards what it should be.
You see, I'm really biased. I'm a big Twitter proponent. I probably spend most of my time on social media using Twitter for engagement, but also that's where I go to find news content. So for me, I think Moments really takes it up a few flights of stairs. I look at it very similar to how one would use Discover on Snapchat. So there's curated content based on interest, news, sports. I'll give you guys an example. I went home last night and I pretty much saw highlights of the baseball game all through Moments. And what I really like about it is that finally you're starting to see some of the integration of the Twitter acquisitions coming together. So you're seeing Vine integrated. You're seeing Twitter video integrated all into one. And again, I look at this as a step in the right direction for Twitter. I think there's improvements to be made, but it really, in my opinion, positions Twitter as a strong content hub and taking a page out of Snapchat's book.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I talked about this earlier on my tech show. I think Moments is an interesting move, but in terms of user acquisition, I don't think it makes it any more relatable as a platform, right? It looks a lot like Flipboard or any other kind of content curation hub like you were mentioning. And so if they have other options, why not choose Flipboard or The Verge or Wired or other things, right? And I'm assuming that they're going to actually want to capitalize on the fact that people can just buy space and real estate and have a whole story around the new Coca-Cola campaign, right? Mm-hmm. Or the new Taco Bell thing on the menu. And so I don't know how much it's about what's trending and what's new versus what advertisers want to put in front of you. And so I think in terms of real estate for revenue, it's an awesome move, right? But I think for user acquisition, and does it make Twitter more usable, or does it help people understand why Twitter is important? I don't think so. And I don't think it's intuitive, but I do like the fact that they're focused on more media content. So it's more videos, it's more photos, it's more visual. I think that part of it is really great. But in terms of, I have 5 buttons or 5 or 6 buttons now and not 4, I think that's going to hurt them in the long run, right? Because it's like, where do you spend your time? And if people don't know where to spend the time, they're going to spend their time nowhere. So that's kind of like my thoughts on it. I don't use it. I don't look at it. If I want to know what's trending, I just go to the Discover page, or I'm looking at my feed of people that I follow. So that's kind of my take, but I guess, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I see Moments right now as really being the side dish. It's not the entree on Twitter. And what I mean is that it's not core functionality that you're going to go on Twitter to utilize, right? What I would like to see is, instead of it being solely curated content by the folks that work at Twitter, if users, so again, kind of bringing it home to Jason and Tyler, they're organizing an event. It would be great if there could be a Moments section carved out for Social Fresh or for Social Media Day or for any other conference out there, where now you're seeing curated content all coming in from Vine, from video, from photo, from anywhere in the Twitter sphere.
They do that already, though. I mean, if you search a hashtag, that already exists. And I think, I don't know, I think it's a good step. I don't think there's really much of a story here yet. I'm glad that Jack is in charge, because I think he'll do some new things. And it seems like this was pushed out quicker because he's been the CEO for about 3 months. But I think in general, they have a long ways to go. I think Twitter's going to be around for a while. I love Twitter. If they really want to compete with Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, I think they have some big changes to make. And I think that's probably going to upset power users, but it's going to need to be much bigger than this.
Yeah, that's totally true. Actually, I had a Snapchat today where I Snapchatted the fact that Facebook was trending on Facebook, and it looked really funny, right? So they're actually using their own platform to bring more attention to the features on their platform. And that's kind of a good transition. If no one else has anything to say about the Moments, is actually the new Facebook emotions. It was only released in kind of beta or testing in Spain and Ireland, because they wanted to keep the sample size small. And they said that most of those users didn't have international friends, which was very interesting. So they're saying that in those countries, they're more connected to people in their country versus outside of their country. And so kind of, what are your thoughts? Do you think 6 is too many? And how is this going to be like a marketing play, right? More analytics, more data, more everything.
Well, first, let me ask you guys, what the hell is Facebook doing? All these new features. I say stick to what you're good at. I just saw
Facebook
Carlos, they know we have a show. We need things to talk about, so this is perfect.
So I just saw a couple days ago. You can doodle now. I call it doodling. You can draw on Facebook photos now. Very soon, Facebook is going to start to look like Crayola. It's going to start to look like kindergartners took over the platform, right? Yeah, just like Snapchat, but without the cool functionality of disappearing content. But with that said, the same thing with the new profiles. I love the whole layout. I'm not a big fan of the video profile pics. Tyler, Jason, has that rolled out on your end? I know it started here in Cali first. Has it made its way over to the East Coast, Jason?
I've seen a couple of people with it. Yeah, it's it's silly. I mean, I don't know. This is Facebook. This is what Facebook does. Facebook rolls out 1,000 new features every week. It's what they do. Most of us don't see it. And the one feature they roll out to a larger audience every week, most of those, 90% of those don't stay, right? Mm-hmm. It's what they do. They test everything. If you really don't want something to stay, don't interact with it. Don't use it, because that's how they decide. They roll stuff out. They roll it out to New Zealand or Ireland or wherever. If people like it, they roll it out everywhere. If people stop engaging, the more that feature is shown, then they get rid of it. So it's really kind of what the public wants. It's like, if you hate what's on the news, it's not the news's fault, it's our fault. So
I'll say this, just going back to the whole reactions though, forget about the monetizing or how they're gonna do that. Just, I will say this, one thing that's always bugged me about Facebook, and this is why I like it. Now, you can ask if 6 is too many, time will tell, but like yesterday, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I'm sure a lot of us might know there's some really sad news that happened yesterday for and it was posted across some people's social media channels. And this has always happened whenever there's sad news. You don't want to like, well, should I like it? Should I not like it? Like, you don't want to, oh yeah, I'm really happy that sad news happened to you. So I think it's good that they've added other ways for you to express how you feel, or react to people's posts. And I think it's better than just a straight up, you either like it or you dislike it. And I don't have it in front of me, but you said there was 6. There's like what, frustrated, happy. I mean, what were they again? But I think they are all legitimate feelings or emotions that you might have to the various types of content that people are posting on Facebook. So I think it's just giving you some more options. I obviously I haven't seen it because it's in beta and it's been rolled out in other countries, not here in the United States yet. So time will tell, but I think it's good. I think I'll like it. So we'll see.
I love the fact that they're adding the emotions. I mean, I don't know if I want them to look like BuzzFeed badges necessarily or large emojis. I don't know what the visuals are going to end up looking like in the final conclusion of this feature. But 4 of these emotions, there's 6 emotions. 4 of them are positive, 2 of them are negative, sad and mad. I think Tyler's right. The ability to express more detailed emotion and empathy and frustration or happiness, I think that's really powerful for a social network where we're supposed to be able to connect with people. It's not really important for businesses, I don't think. I don't know if it's going to roll out to pages. I think that'll be interesting how they treat that. And I don't, it definitely will affect how the newsfeed reacts. If you click wow on something or haha on something or love on something, I don't know if it's going to be equal to a like or, slightly more, slightly less powerful than a like. But Facebook is clearly going to integrate that into their algorithm. In general, I think the big story here is that it allows a more detailed emotional interaction with people. And I think that's important for what Facebook wants to do, which is connect the world.
Yeah, so the emotions are like, love, ha ha ha, yay, wow, sad, angry. Yep. So that's a lot of emotions. Carlos, you're actually muted. Or maybe not muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
I'm a really big fan of emotions, but immediately from a brand marketing standpoint, that's where my mind races to. As a brand marketer who runs social for a company, I want to be able to measure sentiment. And I think a like doesn't tell me enough about my audience. And there's social tools and platforms out there that help you measure sentiment. So I think this is a very positive step in the right direction for Facebook. However, I need to pose this question to you guys. Do you think the move is geared more for their advertisers who are paying the bills at Facebook, or is it truly geared to appease their audience, which is the consumer?
Truly the advertisers.
So you're saying advertisers will be able to advertise you based on your feeling or something?
No, it's just more. I think it's just more data for them. Like it's just
correct.
They can more accurately track the content that they're putting out, and in turn, the ROI for them is higher, and they can charge more. Right? Like the targeted ad is. So they could say like, a wow is more. There's more conversions with a wow than maybe a ha ha ha. Or I mean, I don't know what these meetings are going to sound like in the future, right?
So 2 things. Mike Stelzner said that they are not going to be rolling them out to pages, which is interesting. I didn't know that. So thanks, Mike, for adding that in the chat. But additionally, Carlos, I think it's a great question, and I hadn't thought about it. But everything Facebook does is both for the users and for the advertisers, right? Because if it doesn't work for one of those 2, then they don't have a product anymore.
And Mike just said they are actually going to be rolling out for pages.
Oh.
Not that they're not.
Well.
I think it's a blend of both. I think
well, that was my mistake reading it. I think, sorry.
Users have been calling out for another option besides the like button because we see it. Like they always want to be on like. So I think that's always been a call coming from the users. But yeah, of course, the easy thing would be like, okay, let's just put a dislike button. But clearly by putting more reactions, there's obviously a play where they can monetize this in more directions, get more data points. So like I said, I just think it's a blend of both.
Yeah. Are you guys surprised about, I remember I watched a TED Talk actually about sort of the science behind the like button and how they designed it, how it was executed. I forgot the lady who spoke about it, but she was like the lead on the like button and the thumbs up. And so it was interesting when they kind of announced these 6 different emotions. And I'm like, are they just going to stick these emojis like right next to the like button? It seems a little bit uncalculated on Facebook's part, because I feel like they do a little bit more consumer research and a little bit more research on UI and UX before they just roll out new buttons, right? Because their whole thing
already done that research. I mean, there's a team working on this. They measure everything you do, every split second you're on, every piece of content on every page, everything you hover your mouse over, everything you click on, every time you hit the back button. They measure everything. So I guarantee they're measuring all this as well. And I think we'll learn depending on where this lands, how well it does.
Yeah, I like to call the future reactionary marketing. So we've heard about real-time marketing for years, right? Now, if you have this data, so let's say you're BMW and you run an ad spot on your Facebook page. Imagine if you actually can see the breakdown of who really truly likes the content, who's engaged by it, beyond just the thumbs up or just beyond the comment. And you can actually pivot, and now you can run ads on the fly targeting these folks. So the way I look at social media and where this whole thing is headed, and you're seeing it, it's very evident with Facebook and with Twitter, is it's going to be going from a content platform, an advertising network, to really commerce. And the best way to drive those conversions or drive that commerce is by knowing exactly in the moment how your audience really feels. And again, I'm a big fan of it. I think the like button has really run its course, and I'm personally all in on emoji marketing.
Yeah, when you mentioned reactionary, before we move on, it reminded me of when Instagram introduced their double tap for the like, and that was a huge change, right? There was no platform that was sort of doing that double tap, and it really changed the way that people were engaging with the content on their feed, because they no longer had to look at a picture and then had to like look at where the heart was and then click on the heart, right? As you're going, you can just like every picture really quickly. And we have learned, and then kind of the evolution of Snapchat happened, right, with all the different motions. So I definitely agree that it's reactionary, as well as they're teaching us new gestures to use with our phones to interact with the apps that they build.
Yeah, to echo what Carlos just said there, and I'll put it like in a real life example. If say we're posting content and we're getting a lot of wows for a major hospitality brand or a destination, for example, how cool is it if these people are super passionate about that place, that origin, that area, whatever, and now you can target those people who are just blown away? Like that's what's kind of cool about it. So I'm sure that there's gonna be some really amazing targetability with this, and it's just another form of how drilled down you can get within the back end of Facebook ads.
Very true. Let's ask the audience what they think. If you are a fan of emotions on Facebook, drop a 1 in the comments. If you don't like it, drop a 2. And we want to know what you guys think specifically. So if you have any questions, also go ahead and drop it. So we're seeing a few ones come through.
If you guys write 2, let us know why. Why do you guys think that it's to their disadvantage, or you don't like it, or if you're going to interact with it? And I think actually, Jason, you brought up a good point, right? I don't think users are actually, it's not that they're not smart, but I don't think they realize that if they don't like something, they shouldn't interact with it. And I think a lot of people just, even though they might not like something, they still do it, right? And they don't understand that they're being tracked every single second. And so I don't think people are educated enough to know, hey, if I don't interact with this new feature, it's going to go away. I think a lot of people are.
But Facebook knows how to measure that too. It's like when they do the political polling during the presidential election. They know a certain percentage of people are going to lie to them after they vote. They know a certain percentage of people are going to not answer them or avoid the votes, and they take that into account. I mean, Facebook's measurement of these things is very, very scientific, and they've been doing it for a long time. So I think that's a really good point. Like, most people have no idea that, even with content, if they don't like something, they shouldn't spend time on it or click on it. But Facebook measures how much time after you click a link that you're off the site before you come back. If you're gone for 3 seconds, it's much less important to them than if you're gone for 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So they have ways of determining whether you like a feature or like content, whether you intend for them to know that or not. So I think this is going to be a very human thing for folks. It's going to be something that allows them to express themselves more, and people are going to love it. And the video that Mike Stelzner posted in the comments shows the UI for it. The UI, it's the first time I saw the UI on mobile. It looks really good, really clean. that even encourages it more for me that people are going to like it.
Yeah, that's totally true. So, I mean, if there's something else anyone in the chat or you guys want to add about Twitter or Facebook, I want to move on to sort of what you guys are really experts in, and what I think the audience really wants to learn about is sort of putting on conferences. What is the value? I know I sort of let you guys know the main topics I want to talk about. So let's start a little bit about like what goes into putting on these events, right? Because it's not just the effort that goes in is really to make sure that the people that show up get value from it, right? You guys wouldn't spend months and maybe even a year before the event to plan it so that people say, I don't even know if this is worth going to, right? That's discouraging to hear. So kind of let us know a little bit about the back end of what goes into putting on these events.
Hey, really quick before we do that, can I do a shameless plug here for Blab?
Yes, of course.
So, but just because we're talking about events, this transitions into it. I actually I'll be up in San Francisco on business. And of course, anybody who's on here, and if you've been on Blab for a while, you know that Blab is headquartered in San Francisco. And so we've gotten together with Sean Fricom, the CEO, CTO of Blab, and we are hosting totally free. So if you're in the Bay Area, we're going to have the very first ever Blab in the Bay, and it'll be a Blab up, like an old school meetup or tweet up. But for Blab users, it's going to be taking place a week from this Saturday, and then we're going to actually have some live Blabs taking place live from the destination where we'll be having that. So I'm going to drop a link here in the comments, but if you guys live anywhere in and around the Bay Area, that is happening a week from Saturday. So there we go on the event topic. So there we go.
Awesome.
Let's go ahead and let's take it back a few steps before we talk about Social Fresh and Social Media Day. Guys, for anyone who works in social media or wants to get into social media, anyone who's a marketing professional, what would you guys say are the biggest advantages of going to social media conferences? Jason, let's start with you.
The biggest advantages of going to a social media conference. I think it's different for every conference. Every conference has something different to offer. For me personally, I go to some events purely for the networking, especially the larger events where the networking is better just because of scale. So if you're trying to reach a bunch of people, you have a better chance of reaching them at a larger event most of the time, not always. And I typically go to the smaller events for content, quality content. So there's a couple creativity conferences I go to where I'll sit and watch every speaker. So I think in general, there's networking, education, and community typically are the kind of three areas that most people go for. And then you have the intangibles. People typically go to some conferences just because they want to get away from work, or just because they want to go to Vegas, or just because they want to try to sell to one specific potential client. Those things you can't plan for as well, a little bit. But I've probably done all three of those things as well. So,
got it.
I think to kind of echo what he said, I mean, I think it depends on two things. I think one, it depends on your level. So, I mean, if you're an experienced social media marketer, like, let's just be honest, you're probably, I'm sure you'll retain a few pieces of nuggets from the various speakers and sessions that you might attend. And sometimes it's not even that you might learn something new, but it's also just getting that reminder, that reminding moment of, oh my God, yeah, like I need to be thinking more about that or doing more of that. If you're a new person, then yeah, you're going to get tons out of the content. But again, if you're back to like that person, you've been in this for a while, I think a large part of the reason people still go to these and when they leave and they feel so energized and refreshed from it, it's because the networking, the building the relationships with other like-minded people who are doing similar things to them. When I first started going to my social media conferences, 5-6 years ago, I definitely was like, oh my God, I'm learning so much. And not that I'm not learning anymore, but now I always leave like, oh my God, I met so many amazing people. So it's kind of like shifted in that sense for me. But then even when I was at Jason's conference 2 weeks ago, there was some people who were brand new to social and they were just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I'm learning so much. I just think it depends on your skill level, where you're at, you're going to get different things out of it. And then to also agree with what Jason said, I think depending on the size, obviously a larger conference doesn't present tons more networking opportunities. That being said, I feel the quality of the connections are actually better at the smaller conferences. Because then you're not fighting for people's time. You go to a conference and there's a couple thousand people there. Obviously, everybody wants to work the room, and sometimes you're getting shorter conversations with individuals. Where at the more intimate ones, you can actually have a more long, detailed, intimate conversation, and really kind of feel like you made a connection with some people after that.
Right.
That's a very good point. Perfect. So Anna Lucia Novak says here, love going to learn and ensure I'm on the same page, shortening the learning cycle, which is very true. So a lot of us, myself included, we will go to conferences like the one where I'm sitting at right now that I went to today, because you want to hear what others in your industry are doing. That's, really the best way to learn. At the company where I work, there's not necessarily a social media training. So it forces marketers to go out to Social Fresh, to Social Media Day. So a big part of that, in order to ensure that the marketers actually go and they're walking away with valuable content, guys, goes into the speakers and the programming. So walk us through what's either the criteria, or as you're starting to plan your events, how are you selecting who speaks and what exactly the topics are going to be?
I'll go first because I'm sure Jason's is going to be a lot more thorough and complex than mine. So I'll say this. So Social Media Day, we've only got, this is our third year where we've actually had like speakers. The first couple of years it was more of like a glorified meetup. And for me, like first and foremost, it's important to get people that I know others are going to want to go see. When you're having an event, obviously you're also trying to draw people in, sell tickets, whatever it may be. So you also have to have some, anchors is what I like to call them, like people that have a huge following, have people who are going to want to go get that opportunity to have a conversation with them, see them speak. So that, to me, that's kind of one of the first criteria, is just getting a few of those anchors. Not everybody has to be at that level though for me. And then from after that, I kind of build it out, and I want to make sure I'm having people hit the different topics. So since Social Media Day is really about social media, I don't really go too much into anything outside of social media, but I want to make sure I try to hit most of the platforms. Who's going to be my guru or expert, or speak to, Instagram, or who's going to speak to Facebook or Facebook ads. Sometimes I've integrated top brands. So I've actually given people the first speaking gig if I feel like they have a good opportunity. So a lot of times the first time speakers, a perfect guy who comes to mind right now at this last Social Media Day was Dan Rosenbaum. Dan is head of social media at Travel San Francisco. So like the local DMO up there. And I met him at a different conference that he and I both spoke to, but that conference was much smaller, and it was for the hospitality industry, and he was speaking there. I thought he did a great job. I'm like, this guy would be awesome on my stage. And it was funny because he even said, he goes, I'm kind of pinching myself because I'm sharing a stage today with guys like, Pat Flynn and Mari Smith. And that was kind of new for him, and he loved it. So it's a combination for me. Like, one, I want to get some of those anchors, but I want to make sure I'm covering all the various platforms that I know people want to learn about. And then it comes down to like, what kind of message can they deliver? Can it be powerful? Can it be impactful? A guy who's certainly blown up a lot lately is Brian Fanzo. And I want to say one of Brian's first bigger speaking gigs was at Social Media Day this year. And so, but I knew he would be great to speak to live streaming. So getting him on board there. I mean, when I asked him to do that, it was actually, I think in like February or March. So, I don't have like a set criteria where you have to be like a paid speaker. I know Mike has already bowed out here, Mike Stelzner, but I know Mike, he has a podcast episode on this specifically. And maybe if we can find it, we'll put it in the show notes. But I mean, he has a criteria. There's like 4 things that you need to meet for a Social Media Examiner to speak at their conference. And I think you have to have 3 of those 4 criteria. Of course, I'm sure they'll make exceptions, but for me, it's just a lot of times gut, is this person gonna be great at my event? Can they deliver a powerful message? And, are they going to cover a topic that we need covered?
Excellent. Jason, we'll turn it over to you.
So I just dropped a link in the chat with an article I wrote on this topic about how we think about speakers and book speakers for Social Fresh. So typically we'll have, I think we had 30 speakers at our last conference 2 weeks ago. I probably reviewed about 250 people to get to that 30. So it's a long process for us. We create a big list. We have a committee that does most of this. I used to do it all myself, but now it's a committee, and I contribute to that committee and I vote on that committee, but I'm not the lone decision maker. We take into account a lot of things. In the article I linked, I talk about it being an algorithm. So just like Facebook has their newsfeed algorithm, we kind of have a speaker algorithm. Ours is much less precise, I would say, but we have a lot of pieces of things that we have to look at. One difference between my event and a lot of events is Social Fresh is a business. So, it's something that is about our conference. Our annual conference is about 80% of our revenue, 90% of our revenue right now, depending on the year. we're growing our non-conference revenue, but our conference also grows in revenue. And as the business grows, it's important for us to consistently consider who is going to sell tickets, right? So that's probably the number one for us in what you wouldn't think of. When it comes to how the person's going to perform on the stage, we definitely have things we want to see, things we have to see, but we don't have a checklist like Tyler was describing that Michael uses. Not that that's bad at all. I think that's a great way to organize it. And Michael has a lot of speakers. So that's probably something they have to do. I think for us, it comes down to two main things. Are they going to educate the audience with something new? And are they going to entertain the audience so that the audience will pay attention long enough to learn something new, right? Those are both going towards the same thing. We want to teach people. So they have to have expertise. They have to be comfortable on stage. They have to have speaking experience. They have to be able to communicate something precise in a short amount of time. We do shorter stage time. So if they are used to doing longer instructional content, we do have workshops now that they might be good for, but they wouldn't be good for our main stage. So they kind of have to be very measured and have a good energy well enough to keep people interested to learn something new. People that sell tickets are the anchor speakers that Tyler talks about. So that's the Chris Brogan, Jay Bear, Mari Smith, people like that. Big brands. Big brands can be, a person can be a brand. You know, those people have, their names are brand names to our audience, but also a big consumer and B2B businesses. Even some startups are big brands, you know, like a Buffer. Industry platforms like Twitter or Facebook are big brands. These are things that it's interesting because if you take a survey of a conference and people will tell you who they want to see speak, they'll tell you they want to see a company speak that is exactly like them, that has been successful. So if they're a law firm, they want to see a law firm speak. If they are a small business, that's what they want to see speak. But if you try to sell them tickets based on who they want to see speak, they won't buy those tickets. You have to have big brand names to sell tickets to make a successful event. So you at least break even. So it's a lot of different things attacking each other. At the end of the day, we want to inspire people. We want to encourage and inspire people to do better marketing, build a better business. So we look for people that can educate something new and entertain people and keep them interested while they're doing it. I think those are kind of the high marks for us.
So it looks like if I want to make it to Social Fresh next year, I need to start practicing my entertainment skills.
It's interesting. You know, I have a ton of speakers that work at agencies and work at vendors, and it's very difficult for us to book a lot of people in those categories.
Right.
Typically, the people we book in those categories have been a part of our community for a long time. So they've been attending conferences, they've been sponsors, they've blogged on our site, they've done webinars with us, things like that. And they're super smart. You know, we just had Jim Tobin speak, who helps us with socialmediacurrent.com. And Jim's spoken twice in the 7 years that we've done conferences. And I love Jim to death. He's super smart. I wish I could book him more. I wish, you know, it made sense business-wise for us to book him more and other people like him. And we try to fit as many of those as possible in. And we try to fit smaller and mid-sized businesses in as well. I'm looking specifically for a lot of those smaller to mid-sized businesses that have case studies that are more relatable to a wider range of folks. And additionally, one thing that has been mentioned that we put a lot of effort towards is diversity. So we, excuse me, we book women speakers first because it's much harder to book quality female speakers at least in our industry, and in most marketing communication industries. Women just aren't as prolific of thought leaders in general. It's harder to book them. It's harder to discover them. It takes a lot more time for us to book women speakers. That's just the fact of the industry. If you want to talk more about that, please feel free to chat me up. It's not something I want to be true, but it is true. So we book women first to make sure we have a large amount of women. And if you look at our stats, 50% of our speakers are women. And we think that's important. We're also now trying to get a better racial diversity, which is even more challenging. So that's another challenge that we're attacking this coming year and trying to do well at. So those are some other intangibles that are not, you basically just have to spend more hours on to accomplish those things.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat, actually. Sabrina asked, hold on, the chat is moving. Do you guys try to switch up the big names at the conference, or do you stick to the staples like Jay Bearer? Which is a good question, right? Because some brands are they're going to continue growing, right? So they're always going to be the big players. And so how do they ultimately compete with more of the smaller brands. And if you have a big brand that's there every single year, right, how much are they really changing their strategy? How much are they innovating in their strategy versus, maybe a bigger player, for example, like Buffer, who was able to grow significantly and really kind of have best practices they could teach the audience?
I'll go first. I mean, so obviously Social Media Day, San Diego, Social Media Day is celebrated worldwide. And so there's other events, but we just want to kind of turn it into the official best event of the world. And to do that, we want to get the big names. And we're very fortunate that a lot of industry thought leaders call San Diego home. And so, one of the biggest names out there is Mari Smith, and she lives here. And so we've been blessed that she's wanted to be a part of our event every year. And, even this year, though, whenever I go back to her, like this year, there's always something new and relevant that makes sense to bring her back. Like this year, Facebook actually partnered with her with the Boost Your Business program. So, I do try to switch it up. I'd say 20% of them, though, I do also want to return if they're that big anchor and they have a huge following. And who am I to say no to Mari Smith? If Mari Smith's like, Tyler, I want to be at your event, I'm not going to say no to her, So, but then, sometimes there's big names that can come back. So, for example, one that comes to mind is John Lee Dumas. He spoke last year at our conference all about podcasting. John's one of the biggest podcasters out there. And then this year he had a conflict, so he couldn't be back. So that kind of happens. And then that, of course, forces me to go outside the box. But then we were very fortunate. We were able to get a guy like a Pat Flynn, who is a huge guy in this space, and he was able to step on in. And we also we had some people who wanted to, be a part of our event who are not from San Diego, which is fantastic too. So we've been kind of blessed. I'd say about 30% of our speakers are kind of recurring speakers the last couple of years, but it's not necessarily planned that way. It just kind of works out that way. And I'm always also cognizant of wanting to bring in new blood, new talent, new perspectives. People want to see that. They don't want to go and see the same people at every conference. I get that.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. I'm going to shoot straight with you guys. So in the last couple of years, I've been to a lot of conferences. I've heard a lot of the same case study that brands present that's a year old. There's a lot of conferences that you go to now that you're not hearing about what brands are doing on Snapchat. You're not hearing about what they're doing on Periscope. So do you guys have a criteria that you hold your speakers to in terms of, do they have to stick to a certain format? Are they bound to speak within a campaign that they've done the last, let's say, 6 months as opposed to a year?
Well, Carlos, I want to answer that too, but actually, I'm curious what Jason has to say about the bringing in the big names and the anchors and trying to switch it up, because he didn't get a chance to answer that.
Yeah, sure. We bring people back if I think they have something important to say. I don't really, you don't want to repeat the same speakers year in, year out. You want to bring fresh voices in. I think we'll probably bring one person back next year from this conference. We've switched to an annual conference now, maybe two. And we're intentionally doing that because we're an annual conference now and we want to make sure to keep it fresh. But, people that perform well year in, year out, I'm happy to have back. Scott Monty, Chris Brogan, Jay Bear, Adrian Parker from Patron, Sarah Evans, Paula Berg at HP. All of them, I know when they're on stage, we survey our attendees, we see what people gain the most from. They're always in the top 5 speakers, right? They're always rated the highest and by a lot of points. So we respond to the audience as well. And all of those speakers that I named always have something new to say, Carlos. So I think it's a good point. I think you do have some companies, I'm not going to name any specific brands, but we've had brands speak a year apart and have a case study that's very similar. And that's not something that we intended or wanted. And it's something we definitely make sure that doesn't happen anymore. We don't allow that anymore. If a presentation's been presented a lot of times at other conferences, we also don't allow that. So we want something new. Jay Bear, Chris Brogan, Peter Shankman, these are people that speak 100 times, 200 times a year. So they're saying the same thing at a lot of conferences. We try to work with them the best we can to make sure what they're presenting at our conference is new. You can't always do that. And you can't do that with every speaker necessarily, but it's something we work hard at for sure. And based on our feedback, people that speak at Social Fresh are speaking on new topics, creating new decks, and bringing very fresh stuff. We don't have a limit on 6 months, 12 months, anything like that, but we have a high focus on making sure that doesn't happen.
So one thing too, and it's, I'm a big believer in Jason's conference. I'm a big believer in the guys like Mike Stelzner's conference too. In the spirit of Social Media Day, because it is kind of something that's celebrated worldwide, we try to keep our price point very manageable. So we also get a lot of people who maybe couldn't afford to go to the bigger conferences, and that sometimes that's their opportunity to see, a guy like a Pat Flynn or a Mari Smith sometimes. So, yes, I want to make sure they're delivering new content, but I also recognize too, for a lot of times, because people attend Social Media Day, a lot of times are in the drive market of California. We will get people who come from Arizona or Colorado or Texas because they'll see the level or the caliber of the speakers that we're having, and it's a little bit more affordable than maybe a bigger conference just because it's a day event. So that's certainly worked for us. But one thing I'll say too is, with the speakers, and which is so important, I'm glad Jason said this, we actually survey the audience too. And it's so, I love that because I love seeing the responses, and the feedback from those speakers. And, I'll be honest with you, and it's not a knock on the bigger names, but sometimes the ones that totally just shock and awe people are those new first timers. And I'll be honest, like this year at Social Media, the two highest scoring speakers we had, and I want to say it was their biggest, it was the first time they were ever speaking in an audience of this size. We had about 420, 450 people at Social Media Day, was Amy Schmidauer and Brian Fanzo. So they actually scored the highest on the surveys amongst the audience. They had the most energy. They delivered powerful messages, and people just soaked it up. So, big names are great, but it's also good to get new blood in there too.
Very cool.
I'm curious about. Go ahead.
No, go for it, Saba.
I was just going to add. I'm going to add an anecdote, Tyler. I think that's a great point. I don't know if you got to see Anthony Quintano, who is at the Today Show. But he does a lot of their photography, amazing photographer, does a lot of on-the-go mobile content creation. And that was his first time really presenting in front of a marketing audience ever. And he was a little nervous. He hadn't done it before, but he did an amazing job. And he was definitely one of our highest rated speakers, and did one of the most interactive presentations where he was actually creating content from the stage with some time-lapse photography and other things. So I think that's a great point, but you do have to curate those new people very carefully because they're just as likely to bomb as they are to shine. And that's not their fault, but you have to learn how to spot those kind of diamonds in the rough, which takes a little time to learn.
Yeah, totally. So what about someone who hasn't been to an event or they're not kind of a regular? What is like the best way for them to get value, right? So I haven't been to too many marketing events. I've been to other types of events, but not marketing. So what would you say sort of is the best way to get the value, to kind of try to network with the speakers, network with the audience? I mean, how is your time best spent really? Because I think a lot of these conferences are a little bit more expensive, right?
Start early. The networking doesn't have to start at the day of the conference.
Good point.
A lot of these conferences will have, LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups or, email lists, or, just start searching the hashtag, Jason's Social Fresh hashtag. You can search that and people will be start talking about that 2 or 3 days in advance. Or they'll talk about 2 or 3 months in advance. I'm getting fired up for Fresh, and participate in those conversations. And that way they start to see the avatar, they get to know the face, you start to have conversations with them. And then I swear to God, it's magic. You show up at that conference and you see that person like the opening night mixer, and you already feel like you know them because you've been like engaging with them on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it is for the last couple of weeks. And so get that networking starting early. That's definitely like tip number one right there.
And then I'd show up early.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Show up early and stay later. Like allow, conferences might be like a 2-day event. Try to show the day, 2 days before or a night before if you can during the day, so you can like go out that night, organize some stuff, and stay later too, so you have time to network after the event too. And then if there's people you want to meet with, and if you've started to develop and build a relationship with them on social media, try to plan a breakfast, plan a coffee. Try to go have that time. Make sure you're having that time with those people while you're there, and that's how you're gonna get the most out of it, from my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, a lot of people actually encourage that hashtag. I actually did that for a lot of the meetups that I do in Orange County. I go and see who pressed attending, right? Who's going, and then kind of checking out their profile. So you know a little bit ahead of time what the audience is. And if you do meet someone, you might already know kind of what they're working on, what their interests are. A lot of times on Meetup, they actually ask you questions to get to know you a little more, right? And so that's a really great tip to sort of get ahead of the game. It's not just about those 2-3 days, right?
I always show up early, and I'll typically stay late to conferences that I attend, because there's smaller groups there, and they're typically influential people or people that just care a little bit more. So it's the organizers and the sponsors and the speakers, or just the most passionate people. And you kind of get ahead of everything. You get to see the layout of stuff. You get to check in earlier. You get more time with people. And in general, it subscribes you to small groups. So I think Tyler was touching on that, but going to happy hours, coffee, lunches, and investing in small groups, I think is really good. Don't try to meet everyone, I would say. Some other tips that we give at our conference is to make sure you have a focused goal. So like one goal you're trying to accomplish at that event. You probably have a dozen or 100 different things you're trying to fix in your business or your marketing or whatever the conference is about. Focus on one thing, and don't talk incessantly about that thing necessarily, but keep it in the back of your mind. So every person you're talking to, every expert you come across, every session you look at, you're coming back to that and seeing how it can help with that one focused goal. And that's a really great way. And also have a consistent system for taking notes and for connecting with people. And that could be a notepad, that could be Evernote, that could be LinkedIn, whatever it is. Be consistent with it and set reminders to come back to it. So put a calendar item on your Google Calendar in a week after the conference, and a month after the conference, and 3 months after the conference. Come back to that system of notes that you have and reconnect with those tips and reconnect with those people that you wrote down. And that will really allow you to get longer term value from those interactions and that networking.
Absolutely. One thing I want to add to all that is, invest in people. So when you're there, don't make it about yourself. Don't just want to get there with a one person agenda where you just want to talk about yourself. Literally ask questions about everybody else, absorb as much as you can, get them talking about themselves. If you follow them on social media, mention the things that you've noticed. And I'm going to give a personal story on this too. And it actually was at Jason's conference. So I've known Chris Brogan for years, and I've met him at other conferences before. And, we typically have that 10, 15-minute conversation. And at the opening night party at Jason's, I knew, anybody who's been following Chris, he's obviously made a huge effort in the weight training, weight loss, all that stuff. And so I just started asking him all about that. Wasn't asked about social, wasn't doing all this business stuff, but just investing on him personally. And so, you could definitely tell he appreciated that. The next morning, I was literally grabbing breakfast on my own, and he just came up and just sat down with me. And that turned into an 1.5-hour long breakfast. Okay. That's the most time I've ever had one-on-one with Chris Brogan. And to me, that alone made Social Fresh amazing. Cause what did I do in that time? That's when then I was able to pick his brain. Hey, I'm really interested in how I can grow my business this way. What do you think? And we just had a great conversation. And I think when he sat down, I don't think he envisioned that we would talk more than maybe 20, 30 minutes. And like I said, but it became that much more engaging. And it was all because I attribute it to the quality time that we spent the night before, not trying to, have some hidden agenda, but just being real and actually talking about real life things. We're all people. We all have day-to-day things. Some of us have family, some of us have kids, some of us have stress, and if you follow people on these various social channels, you pick up on those signals and you personalize your conversations to them, it's going to make you that much more memorable to whoever you're speaking to at all these conferences and events.
Very good point. So just one thing to keep in mind, guys, do not fanboy or fangirl when you meet Jay Baer, Chris Brogan, or one of these guys.
You want to be the person that's normal with them, right? Because at the end of the day, they're human. I think that's what you were trying to talk about, right, Tyler? You were just trying to talk about normal things, right? Nothing about social, nothing about marketing. Just really get to know the person. You didn't even know who they are, right?
So, it's so funny you guys say that. So, but again, just to prove, you said, don't be a fanboy. They're humans just like us, right? And they actually have the same experiences. So one of Jason's speakers, and Jason, correct me, I'm going to botch your name. Was it Lori, the girl from Facebook?
Lori Mueller, yeah.
Lori Mueller. So Lori, I was talking to earlier, and then this is at the opening networking party. And then Chris kind of walks up, and that's when I'm like, oh, do you know Chris? And she didn't really know who Chris was. And then I'm like, oh, hey, here's Chris. And she was like, okay, whatever. So she was not fanboying because she didn't know who Chris Brogan was. And then Chris was kind of talking to her. And then the next morning at breakfast, he's like, hey, why didn't you tell me that girl works at Facebook? So there he is now. He's bummed that he missed that opportunity, So, yeah, just be real, right?
Absolutely. So I've got a question for both of you guys, and then I want to hear from you, Saba, and I'll give you my take. So you need to pick one now, and we want to know why. Should attendees go to a conference and focus on networking, listening to content, or connecting with speakers? So pick one and why.
Great. I'll go first, I guess. If I personally think they should go to network. I think that when you're connecting with people online, it's amazing. A lot of content, to be honest, it's not that those speakers they're not saying anything great. They're saying amazing content, right? And you're going to sit there and you're going to listen, but there's a lot of content out there, right? But there's nowhere where you're going to be able to have 500, 600 people in one place where you can actually meet them in person, look them in the eye, have body language, get engaged with them, really kind of strike a chord with them. And I think that's where really people start to think about how they can do business with you or how they can incorporate you or collaborate with you. So I think that's an opportunity that everyone should bank on, or they should focus on, right? Is like getting to know people, and not just in like a business sense, but just getting to know the person, right? Like Tyler and Jason and all of us have mentioned, just, hey, what's up? How's your day going? Are you liking the conference? Okay, cool. You know, if they talk about lunch, but don't go in there with a calculated plan to just talk about yourself and what you're doing and, you know, how you're crushing it. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you want to listen more than you speak. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
Carlos, I'm not going to answer it straight up. I kind of answered this earlier, and I said it depends on to me, it just depends on maybe your skill level. For some people, if you're brand new, they say your company is sending you to one of these conferences because you're new to a role and you're maybe not established. Content probably will be very valuable. But for some other people, it could be the opportunity to meet with speakers or network. I'll say for me personally, it's all about the networking, you know, and it's a blend of the attendees and the speakers. I just like that face-to-face interaction. I'm a handshake kind of guy, you know, and even with clients, like in my business, that's why I travel to where I'm going. I don't, you know, yes, we live in a world where we can do business anywhere, but I think a large part of the reason maybe clients prefer doing business with us is we meet face-to-face. You know, we're not just doing everything virtually. I think that's the power of it. And kind of tying it back to even Blab. That's why I think we all love Blab. You know, we communicate with each other through Twitter and through Facebook groups and all that, but now we get to actually have conversations and we can collaborate together. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's just like in the beginning when you guys were talking about your fantasy football, right? It's like something you guys do on the side that has nothing to do with work, but it's a way for you guys to kind of hang out or talk or communicate that's not about work.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
Watch Mark.
Yeah, Jason.
John.
Jason, what are your thoughts on conferences and sort of what's the best way for people to take advantage of their time?
Yeah, it's I hesitate to answer this question, but I think Tyler's right. It just depends on where you're coming from. If you're attending Social Fresh, you really don't have to think about it because you're getting all of it because it's one track. If you're attending a larger event, I think you know, if you're a beginner, you go for content, and if you're not, you go for networking. But to like connect with the speakers, I mean, I guess that's just another form of networking. I don't know if that's a separate thing. For me, I've never really attended social media conferences or digital conferences for the content. I kind of had to teach myself before there were any conferences. I mean, we were the first social marketing conference focused on this, you know, years and years ago. And because of that, when I attend conferences, I focus on finding the 20 people that I want to spend time with and talk to. Most of them are really good friends of mine. If I have Chris Brogan's one of my best friends. Jay Bear is a good friend. Kip Bodner, CMO of HubSpot, is one of my best friends. When I get to see them at a conference, it's really one of like 2 or 3 times in a year I get to see them, period. So I really wanted to spend time with them. These are also the people that support my business in many ways. They're speakers or sponsors. And that's how I kind of choose to do business, is I do business with people I like and people that I consider friends. So for me, it's networking, but it's a very personal kind of networking. I'll also go see those people speak if I can, but typically I don't have time for both. So I think it's an interesting question, Carlos. And I think everybody finds that common ground. I would say one thing, don't feel like you have to go to every session for sure. And focus on the sessions you think you'll get the most out of, whether it's someone that you know or something really relevant for your business. And number 2, I would say look for unique opportunities like Tyler's Breakfast to really sit down and get to know one person. I think those are very awesome opportunities. Most of my best sponsors have come from face-to-face conversations at events. HubSpot was our second sponsor back in a 2008 event in Boston. I met, their former CMO and became friends with him. And then a month later, they were sponsoring my first event. So that came from really just a no bullshit conversation with him and him anything. I didn't intend to pitch him anything. It was just a great conversation and building of a relationship. And I think those are very worthwhile.
Yeah, awesome, I'm with you guys. Awesome. I'm with the consensus. It's all about networking, right? And one philosophy of mine is that relationships and the networking doesn't end when the conference ends. You go to the conference, you get a chance to meet people in person, and then those relationships are going to last well beyond the time the conference is over. So I know we are coming up on time, and Saba is going to bring us home. So take it away.
Yeah, it was a good conversation at 7 p.m. Can you guys hear me okay? Carlos's audio kind of... Okay, cool. All right, so just to close out the show, we've talked about a lot of stuff. So Tyler and Jason, if you guys could spend 45 seconds pitching your conference and your event and tell kind of the viewers why they should attend in 2016, we would love to hear that from you because we've talked a lot about events. You guys put a lot of effort in, and obviously you guys probably want to meet them in 2016.
Jason, I'll let you go first.
Sure. Social Fresh 2016 is going to be in Orlando, Florida, August 17th to 20th. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be about twice as big as any conference we've ever done. It took us a long time to feel comfortable growing, but it's still going to be a single track. We're going to have great workshops. It's going to be 4 days for the first time. So we're really blowing it out. It's also going to be amazing experience. We've really gotten the experience down. I think Tyler could speak to that. He attended this last one, and next year's going to be even better. So there's going to be tons of networking. Off-sites, we'll probably go to like downtown Disney or something like that and do some karaoke with a bunch of social marketers, which should be pretty fun. So we're really building in the experience of it and creating more of those opportunities for one-on-one networking. And we've got some exciting speakers I can't wait to announce. I've signed some of them already. It's going to be fun. If you go to socialfresh.com/2016, you can actually buy really early, really affordable tickets right now. But we haven't announced anything. We've already sold, I think 30 tickets or something like that from people that just trust us. So it's pretty exciting. I'm really excited about this one. So check it out. And then as a side note, I'm glad Tyler brought it up earlier, but do check out socialmediacurrent.com. I'm a big believer that it's going to make life easier for a lot of social marketers.
So Social Media Day is celebrated worldwide June 30th. So I'm sure in most of your cities, if you live in a major city, there's oftentimes an event going on. Usually it's a meetup. Sometimes they might get a few small panels going on. But if you want to go to a great event, Social Media Day San Diego has kind of become the go-to top event worldwide for Social Media Day. And it's on June 30th. It's June 30th every year. We are always consistent with that. Some cities will move it around to try to always put it on a weekend. So this year it's going to be, I want to say on a Wednesday, and it's of course going to be here in San Diego. So have had preliminary conversations, but I'm pretty much, confident that we'll deliver a stellar lineup like we've done every year. Just to put in perspective too, one thing I do take pride in is because I do sometimes give people their first stab on stage, and I'll try to tap into that untapped talent. And 2 years ago, we even had a guy named Zach King. And I don't know if you guys know who Zach King is or not, but he is like one of the Vine superstars, and we had him on Vine, and he's like a Vine magician. He's been on the Ellen DeGeneres show. Like I said, we had Brian Fanzo. We try to tap into some of the new talent, but then we also tap into the as I said earlier, the headliners too. So it's a great value. It's a value event. We obviously, being in the spirit of Social Media Day, we're not going to charge for like a major conference, but then again, we're not incurring a major expense like guys like Jason and some of these other conferences are. So kind of a win-win. If you can't afford the big event, we're a great secondary event for you to check out. And yet you're still going to get world-class talent. June 30th, San Diego.
Awesome.
A couple people already looked like they were trying to check the ticket prices. You do have to enter code FRESH in order to buy a ticket. So even if you're just trying to look at the price, hit FRESH when you check out, and that'll get you in there. And I highly recommend Tyler's event if you're on the West Coast, or even if you're just looking for a great social media day. He does a great job. I love the San Diego weather as well. So there's a lot of good reasons to go out there.
Absolutely. And I, of course, can speak to Jason's event. I've gone there for 4 years in a row. It's awesome. So And hey, anybody, if you're in San Francisco a week from this weekend, check out the first Blab Up. And include, of course, Sean for Con. Everybody will be there. We're gonna do some live blabs. Rob Sesternino from Rob Has a Podcast, and Tyson will be there, and Joel Kahn will be there as well. So
hey, I will be there too.
Carlos will be there too. So again, it's a free event. We're gonna go ahead though. I'll post the link one more time. There it is. If you guys want to check it out, join us in San Francisco for the very first ever Blab Up next week.
Blab's the Bay.
Guys, y'all have been great. Make sure that you follow at Jason Keith, at Tyler J. Anderson on Twitter. Yeah, and follow at Social Fresh and Casual Fridays HQ. And guys, y'all have been great. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here on Social 545.
Yeah, it's been really, really fun. Learned a lot about conferences, talked a little bit about Twitter moments and Facebook. You guys are definitely welcome back on the show anytime.
Very cool. Well, this is a great crowd, good audience, very interactive. And yeah, if you guys need anything, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me as well. So,
all right, guys.
Awesome. I just want to do a quick plug for our show next week. We're going to be here, same time, same place, same co-host, and we're going to have Sunny Lenarduzzi with us. She is a social broadcaster. She is a Canadian. She's in Vancouver, and she lives in my hometown. So I'm super excited to have her. She actually just got back from NATO in Europe, where she spoke about social media and how governments can engage their population and their crowd a little bit more. And so she's amazing. We're going to talk a lot about video content with her. So definitely subscribe. I've linked it up, and I will do it again. So I hope I see everyone next week.
Cool.
We can't hear you, Carlos.
All right, guys. We will see you next week on Social 545.
We're out. Bye, guys.
Peace.